everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my November mid-month wrap-up. So I will be discussing the books that I read from the 1st of November to the 15th. So without further ado, let's just get into it. I am going to talk about the book that I liked the least and work my way up to the book that I liked the most. So the first book I want to discuss is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. This is a very well-known YA series. Now, I, for some reason, initially thought that this was paranormal in some way, but at least this first book is not paranormal at all. It is strictly a murder mystery all about Jack the Ripper, which of course is the very famous serial killer that never got caught, who I believe was enacting his murders in the mid-1800s or so. So this is a series that comprises of 4 books, and it's about this girl named Audrey Rose, who is definitely not your typical teenager in 1880s London. She studies forensics under her uncle, and so her uncle is basically teaching her how to perform autopsies and how to help solve murders from those autopsies. One thing I want to point out first is that even though there is a lot of descriptions and talking about performing autopsies and, you know, cutting into bodies and dissecting them and analyzing them, I never found myself being like grossed out in any way. I feel like, you know, because this is YA, I think Kerri Maniscalco does a really good job of describing what's going on, but in a very, I don't know, polite way, I guess. I don't know how to describe it in a very like accessible and easy way to where it's not too gory, at least in my opinion. And I am someone that does not like gore at all. So if I can stomach it, no problem. I think that most people would be fine. So I did end up giving this 3.5 stars. I overall really enjoyed it, especially the characters of Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. I immediately just loved their relationship, their banter, but also their mutual support of each other. I can already tell that this is going to be a very healthy relationship between the two of them, and that's not always something you see in YA, so I definitely really appreciate that. I mean, these characters are definitely the reason that I am planning on continuing with the series. I think if this book had characters that I didn't love, then I probably would not be motivated to pick up the second book. So getting on to the negative things, the things that I didn't like so much about this book. For one thing, it was so easy for me to guess who the murderer actually was. Maybe if you've never really read a murder mystery before, you wouldn't be tipped off as to who the murderer was, but to me it was very obvious by like the halfway mark of this book who the murderer was. But at the same time, I didn't know the circumstances of why this person was killing people and all of that, so that was still very interesting. I also think that at some points in this book, Audrey Rose was acting pretty stupid, which doesn't really make sense because she's supposed to be this really smart person who is very much into forensics and science and things like that. So I don't know, some of the things that she was thinking and saying and doing, I was just like, really girl, like, are you that stupid? But other than that, I did overall enjoy this book, and I am really looking forward to continuing on with the series because I've heard that Hunting Prince Dracula, which is the next book, is like everybody's favorite book of the series. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one next month. The next book that I want to discuss is Two Dark Reins by Kendara Blake. This is the 3rd installment in the Three Dark Crowns series. So I'm giving this one 4 stars. I overall really did enjoy it. For me, my favorite installment is still One Dark Throne, which was the 2nd book, and I read that one last month. I just loved the plot of that one, and the pacing was so good. This installment definitely went in some very different and unexpected directions, and I did think that the pacing was good overall, but yeah, for some reason I just didn't enjoy it as much as One Dark Throne. But I will say I have absolutely no idea how this series is going to end. There's just one more book called Five Dark Fates, which came out I think in September. So I'm very interested to see how the series is going to end, because by the ending of this book, I have no idea what's going to happen next. So the next book I want to discuss is Kickin' It by Rachel Van Dyken. This was an arc that I got off of NetGalley, and I am so happy to report that I am finally getting to my NetGalley arcs again. I definitely missed reading them and reviewing them both for the NetGalley site and for Goodreads. So I really enjoyed this one. This is actually the 2nd book in a romance companion type series. The first book was called Risky Play. I think I gave that one 3.5 stars. I did overall enjoy that one, but this one I enjoyed so much more because I think there was just so much more depth to the characters and their relationship to one another. So essentially this installment follows Matt, who is a sports agent specifically for soccer. He actually represents two of his best friends, and then this girl Parker, who is a soccer player, and she wants to be represented by Matt. So that's kind of how their relationship starts. It's not really an enemies to lover situation, it's more of like an annoyed to lover situation. I really enjoyed both characters. I also really appreciated how Van Dyken really went into some darker and more serious topics. This book definitely talks about sexual assault and rape, so if that is a content warning for you, I would be aware of that. But I thought that the subject was handled really well, and I thought that it brought up some really important topics about how, you know, lately in the media there has been brought up, you know, these doctors that have molested athletes, and so that topic is what is brought up in this story, and I just thought it was done really well. But I also really loved the relationship between Matt and Parker. It was just a lot of fun to read. I also just felt like there's like the perfect amount of smut for the story. I think there's only like 1 or 2 sex scenes, and I don't think it goes too graphic. So if you are someone who loves adult romance but you are not so fond of graphic sex scenes, I would definitely recommend this book because I thought that Van Dyken did those scenes really well. I really like the characters in this series as well. They're all really fun and funny, and we do get to see the characters that were featured in the first installment. So yeah, I definitely recommend this author and this series. I have another one of her books off of NetGalley actually, which I will be reading soon, and I am very much looking forward to because I enjoyed this one so much. Next book I want to discuss is Archenemies by Marissa Meyer. This is book 2 in the Renegades trilogy, and I overall really enjoyed this. I'm giving this one 4.5 stars. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as Renegades. For me, there were aspects about this installment that I actually enjoyed more than the first book, but at the same time, this book just wasn't as action-packed or as epic as the first installment, so I definitely do feel a bit conflicted about my feelings toward it. I mean, overall, if you're looking for a very action-packed series, this is not the series for you. I feel like Marissa Meyer focuses more on like the politics of this city and of this world, as well as kind of a question of morals between these renegades and the anarchists, because, you know, the renegades are labeled as the heroes and the anarchists are the villains. But Marissa Meyer definitely questions our views of those two groups, because there are some renegades who are really shitty people and there are some anarchists who are really great people and do good things. So like, it is definitely one of those series that's going to make you think about morality in general. My favorite aspect of this series is by far the characters, so I really did appreciate that Marissa Meyer developed them so well in this installment, and I also really just love the slow burn romance between Adrian and Nova, and I'm very curious and excited to see how this series ends. So Supernova came out I think a couple weeks ago, and I pre-ordered it, so I have it with me. So I'm very interested to see how this is going to end, because it's just a trilogy, but I feel like at the end of this book there's just so much more to the story that needs to be told. So yeah, I'm definitely reading Supernova next month, and I will definitely let you guys know all of my thoughts about it. Alright guys, and now on to the 2 5-star reads that I have read this month so far. The first one being Daisy Jones and the Six. I actually reread this on audio at the beginning of the month, and it is still a 5-star for me. It was a really cool experience re-listening to a book. I've never actually listened to an audiobook more than once before, so it was very interesting for me to pick up new details that I didn't pick up listening to this the first time. This time I did realize, however, that this is not a perfect book, and I also feel like it's not a book that is meant for everyone. I don't know, I could definitely see why some people really did not like this book. I just don't think that it was written for everyone, but especially if you're someone like me who really appreciates any type of music, I think you would absolutely love this story. So for those of you that may not know, although I'm surprised that you wouldn't, because literally every booktuber talks about this book, but it's about a fictional band from the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it is basically kind of based on Fleetwood Mac. There's a couple of other bands that give me like this same vibe, but it's basically about like the rise and fall of this band, how they got together, and then how they ultimately broke up. I will say my only gripe with this book is that with the audiobook and the physical book, you can't always tell who's speaking. Even though in the audiobook everybody has a different voice actor, sometimes it's just not clear who's talking, and I kind of wish that Taylor Jenkins Reid would have reiterated through the book who everyone is in relation to one another, because I did feel that even though every now and then these characters would restate their name, they didn't restate their job or who they were in the band or anything like that. So sometimes I would get confused in terms of, well, like what instrument did they play, or were they a producer? Were they the manager? Were they the agent? Like that was a little bit confusing, and this time around I did get a little bit more annoyed about it than I did my first time reading it. So maybe if you're reading this for the very first time, I would suggest maybe taking a couple of notes as to like who each character is, because unfortunately Taylor Jenkins Reid doesn't remind you of that throughout. But other than that, this book is just amazing, and it is definitely going to be one of my top favorite books of the year. All right guys, we have one more book to talk about, and that is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. I did an entire reading vlog about this book. This is the 7th and final installment in the Throne of Glass series, for those of you that don't know. I did a whole reading vlog series about my experience reading this entire series of books for the very first time. So I do have a playlist of all of those vlogs on my channel. So if you want to hear all of my in-depth thoughts about this, definitely go check out that reading vlog. Specifically, I would suggest checking out like the last 10 minutes or so of that video if you just want to hear my thoughts and you don't want to see the rest of the vlog. But basically, I did overall really enjoy this installment. I do think that there were some pacing issues. At the same time, I really just appreciated how epic of a finale this really was. Something else that I wanted to say that I never got to say in my reading vlog because I just kept forgetting to, was after finishing this, I finished this like, I think in like the mid-afternoon of the day that I finished it. So I had like the whole rest of the day that I didn't have a book to read, and at first I was giving myself permission to just like not read it all, because this is such a, you know, commitment of a book. This is like almost 1,000 pages, and so I kind of wanted to like give myself and give my brain a bit of a break. But I found myself feeling kind of empty after finishing these books and like getting attached to the characters, and I just kind of felt this void in my heart that I had to immediately pick up another book. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to note that because I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I of course had to give this 5 stars, and I cannot wait to read more of Sarah J. Maas's books in the future. Okay guys, that's going to be it for my November mid-month wrap-up. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you would consider pushing that like button and subscribing. And if you do, don't forget to push that notification bell button below so that you will be notified every time I upload. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!